So what do you do when everything goes out the window, especially mid-speech? So we've already been talking about in this series, and if you haven't had a chance to watch it, I'm going to encourage you to go back and watch the previous two videos. We talked about why your speech goes out the window. Why does that happen? What's happening in our brain, in our speaking system, in our nervous system? Then we talked about what to do to prime your brain for smooth speech. What can you do to prepare to prevent that from happening? But if it does happen, what do you do? How do you handle it? And that's what we're going to talk about today. My name is Michael Williams, and today I'm going to give you a few very, very specific actions that you can take while you are speaking to prevent things from going out the window. So let's just jump right into it. One of the things that you've heard us talk about almost throughout the entire series, and we've talked about it so much because the scientific basis of it is there, and it's very blatant, it's in your face, and so it's something that's very basic. You've heard it before, I've heard it, but believe it or not, a lot of people just don't do it, or they forget to do it. In fact, there's two things here, but we're combining them into one, and that is to pause and breathe. Now remember, we're talking about what to do while you're speaking. So for example, let's say you're giving this presentation while I'm speaking. What do you do if all of a sudden you start to get stuck, you start to get cloudy, everything goes out the window? Number one, pause and breathe. You want to pause a bit more than you normally would, so that you have what we call this cognitive breathing space. When you pause and you breathe, you're doing a few things. You're tapping into your parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. This is the part of our nervous system that allows us to just relax, to just start to relax down. And one of the best ways to do that is through deep breathing, deep breathing. You say, well, Michael, how can I do that while I'm speaking? Well, you've heard me do it in a lot of my videos. Sometimes you'll hear me breathe. Now, I'm trying to quiet that down some, but sometimes you'll just hear me breathing. And it's not because I'm nervous or anxious. In fact, that's probably one of the reasons why I'm not nervous or anxious. I can do this on video. I can do it in front of 10 people, 50, 100, 1,000 people. Doesn't matter. But that breathing helps to keep me calm, and it does something else. It helps my prefrontal cortex, that's my thinking brain, if you will, the brain that makes decisions, the brain that helps me recall what I want to say, keeps me clear. When I pause and I breathe, it helps the prefrontal cortex maintain control. It helps it maintain control. If not, the amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex, it takes over, and all of a sudden the heart rate goes up, we get tense, we get cloudy, we start speaking real fast because our body is bracing, is being prepared to fight or run or freeze. So by pausing a bit more than you usually would and breathing a bit deeper, you can reset your system, you can regain control while you're speaking. Now, I recommend taking deeper breaths while you're speaking through the nose. So in the pause that I just did, I took a deeper breath through my nose, and now I'm speaking on the exhalation. I'm speaking on the exhalation. Now, generally speaking, the longer you have to speak, within the first couple of minutes or so, you'll start to feel the heart rate come down. You'll start to get into a flow. You'll feel a lot better, generally speaking. Sometimes it may take you 5 minutes, depending on how long you have to speak. So it's different for each person. But the key here to remember is to pause and breathe deeply and do that frequently, especially if you feel like everything's going out the window. And even if it's not going out the window, you still want to do that, right? So that it can keep you calm and relaxed. All right. What's the second thing that you can do? The second strategy or technique that you can employ? The second one is to reframe the moment. Reframe the moment. And you can do this via affirmations, via self-talk, but I'm also going to give you another mental framework, a mental tool that you can use that we've mentioned before. In fact, I told you that I would talk about it again, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. But let's just talk about a couple of examples of how to reframe the moment. So what you say to yourself in that moment is very important. Well, someone says, well, Michael, I don't really have time to talk to myself, to do affirmations while I'm speaking. Well, in fact, you can. I just did right then. I just said, relax, take your time. Just in that moment when I paused, I said, relax. So you do have time. You do have time in the pause to remind yourself of something, to say, I'm an excellent speaker. I'm in control. I got this. I'm so relaxed. I'm having such a great time. I'm a great speaker. I'm feeling so calm. I'm so relaxed. Just take your time. Slow down. You can say those things in the cognitive breathing space, in those pauses. You can very, very quickly give yourself an affirmation self-talk. Okay? Now, the way that we know this is because many, many people, probably including yourself, you found yourself thinking negative thoughts while you were speaking. Like, what's the audience thinking of me? Or I hope I don't forget something. Or I need to do this. I have to do this. Right? So you'll find yourself thinking and therefore feeling certain things while you're speaking. And those things are generally distracting. We call those negative distractors. They're distracting you in a negative way, causing you to feel more anxious, causing you really to get distracted from the topic and from impacting that audience. So because you have enough mental space to think negative, well, guess what? The good news is that you also have enough mental space to distract yourself positively. And that's what you have to believe. Like, you have to believe that I can actually affirm and self-talk and encourage myself while I am speaking. Right? I can also remind myself to breathe more, to relax, to slow down, and we'll talk about that next. I can remind myself to do these things while I'm speaking. So if you find that you're starting to mess up, you're starting to get choppy, you're starting to forget, you're going too fast, you're stuttering, whatever it is, you can reset. You can reset by doing the things we just talked about. So what was the first thing we talked about? We said that you should do what? Pause and breathe. Breathe more frequently and more fully, and pause a bit more so that you can breathe. I'm not talking about pausing so much that you're choppy, but you'll need to pause so that you can breathe. And then the second one is reframe the moment. Now let's take this reframing a little further. So we talked about reframing the moment by affirming and self-talk. And now I'm going to give you a mental tool that you may have heard me talk about. It's called Vic and Rick. So let's walk through each one of these, and I'll tell you why this is important and how it can help you shift your focus in the moment. This is all about in the moment. So the V stands for what? Some of you have heard this. The V stands for what? Value or valuable. And the I stands for impact. And the C stands for clarity. Now I'm going to walk through the Rick, which is basically the same thing, and then we'll go into each one briefly. The R stands for relevancy. The I stands for impact. The C stands for clarity. So let's talk about the V and the R. So when you're speaking, if you're focused on, is what I'm saying valuable to this audience? Is what I'm saying going to add value to this conversation, to this discussion, to the people who are there if you're giving a presentation? Is this going to be helpful to them? Right? So you're just thinking, I just want to make sure this is helpful. I want to make sure that what I'm saying is relevant to the moment. Right? That if we're talking about this topic, any comments that I make should be relevant and valuable. I shouldn't be asking a question or making a comment about something that's irrelevant or not relevant in that moment. It may be relevant later. It may be relevant later in that conversation, later in that meeting, or it may not be relevant at all for that meeting, or it may not be relevant for the people in that meeting. So you just want to make sure, is this relevant? Do I need to mention this or say this right now? Is this the right audience? Is this the right time? So relevancy and value. Value. Is this valuable? Is this going to help them? Is this going to give them information that they don't have? Is this going to remind them of something that they know, but they just need to be reminded of? Am I going to be teaching them something new? Is this going to be inspiring, which is also valuable? So you keep that in your mind. So what's happening is both in the back of your mind and the forefront, you're thinking about value and relevancy, value and relevancy. All right, and we'll show you how this works in just a moment. Then the next thing that you want to ask is, am I impacting my audience? Am I holding their attention? Right? Am I engaging my audience? Well, we have what we call proactive speaking skills. These are skills that you can use to make sure that you're holding the attention of the audience. So we're talking about things like body language, hand gestures, facial expressions. Have you ever talked to someone or watched someone speak and they don't have any facial expressions? Now I realize I'm not moving a lot now, just because I'm in this camera here. Now sometimes I'll move if I have a whiteboard, and I know that I can move. It's just a little more challenging to move on video, but I can do it, and it's probably something that I can improve upon. But if I'm in front of an audience, which I am virtually, but if I'm in front of an actual audience where I can see and touch them, I am going to be moving more. Right? I'm going to be moving into the audience, down the aisle a little bit, moving over here. I'm not going to be pacing, but I might be moving and make a point. So I'm going to be moving a lot more. But because I'm here, I'm taking advantage of what I can move and what I am moving, like my hand gestures, head gestures, facial expressions, voice inflection, emphasis, eye contact, all of those things I'm using to the fullest so that I can impact you. The rhythm, everything that I'm doing is so that I can hold your attention. Now there's different levels of this. There are some people who are just, wow, and they're just out there and they're like, yeah, but that's their speaking style. And that's how they impact the audience. That's not my speaking style. So I have to work with what I have and make sure that I'm doing the very best with my own personality, my own speaking style, so that it feels authentic for me, but at the same time, it's holding your attention. Does that make sense? All right. So impact. You always want to be thinking, am I holding their attention? Am I speaking dynamically? Am I changing the pacing of my speech? Am I pausing so that I'm not fire hosing people with too much information? Am I pausing to give them time to digest the information? Am I using my body and my voice in such a way that it holds their attention, right? Now, the C stands for what? Clarity. Clarity. I know some people probably think confidence, which is great, but in this framework, in this mental tool, the C stands for what? Clarity. And there's two parts to clarity. One is style, and the other is structure. So let's briefly talk about each one, and then we'll talk about how this reframing helps you in the moment, okay? So the style part of clarity is, how am I enunciating? How am I articulating, if you will? Enunciating is the proper word, pronouncing. Am I speaking too fast or too slow? Is my volume too high or too low? Am I modulating my voice so that you can hear it and grasp it? So the main thing is, can you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? It doesn't matter if you have an accent. You don't necessarily have to lose your accent. You may just have to slow down and enunciate more, right? We call this articulating, opening and using your mouth more, finishing your words, which slows you down, and maybe pausing a little more. When you do these things, whether you have an accent or not, people can understand what you're saying. Even if you're not pronouncing the word in the same way, say, for example, if we're talking about English, that an English speaker would use it. Maybe you have an accent and it's coming out a little different, but if you articulate, if you enunciate it, people will understand. They'll understand what you're saying. Okay. But if you go fast, they're not going to be able to understand it. So this is very, very important, not just for people who have multiple languages and so forth, but for everyone. It's important for us to make sure that we're enunciating, that we're articulating, that we're finishing our words, that we're pausing enough to give people a chance to clearly understand what we're saying, that we're not speaking too loud, too low, too fast, too slow. Okay? Now, the other part to clarity has to do with structure. So I won't be able to go into all of this because we have a whole system. It's called the Ultimate Presentation System, which speaks to how to structure, how to prepare and structure and deliver your presentations. But briefly, you want to use something that we call category number. Now, some people have heard me talk about question and answer. What is question and answer? Category number. What is question and answer? Question and answer simply means where you ask a question, like I just did, what is question and answer? And then you answer it. Question and answer is when you ask a question, and then you answer it or you invite the audience to answer it. Question and answer is also where you ask a question, and then you have some categories and numbers under it. So question and answer can be composed of at least two parts. It's the asking of the question and the answering of the question. And in the answering of the question, you can use categories and numbers like I just did. It's composed of at least two parts. Parts is the category, two is the number, and then I explain the first part and the second part. And you can do this with virtually any presentation. And of course, we go deeper into that framework. And we also teach this in our Virtual Speech Masters Club every Saturday, where we do all kinds of different practice scenarios. Okay, presentations, improvised presentations or impromptu, voice and video and small groups and one-on-ones. We practice all of those things. So ask about our Virtual Speech Masters Club. But when you're in the moment, you want to focus on Vic and Rick. Is this valuable? Is this relevant? Am I holding their attention? Am I being clear in the way that I'm speaking and in the structure and how I'm explaining this? Okay? Now, how does this help you in the moment? It's all about focus. It's all about focus. What you focus on in the moment. Wherever your focus goes, there will your attention go, there will your thoughts go, and your behavior and your actions will also follow what you focus on. So if you're focusing on really the purpose of your conversation, of your presentation, of your interview, which is you want to add value, you want to be relevant, you want to hold their attention, and you want to be clear. That's why you're there, right? So if you're focused on that, that means that everything that you're doing is leaning in that direction, right? Everything that you're doing with your body, with your mind, is leaning in that direction, as opposed to allowing yourself to be negatively distracted by focusing on and thinking about what the audience is thinking about. You hope that they're not thinking something negative, hoping that you don't make a mistake, hoping that you don't forget. When you're thinking about that, you start becoming more nervous, more anxious, you start forgetting, and you actually cause the thing that you don't want to happen. Because, why? Because that's what you're focused on, right? So just think like a boat. Wherever you point it, that's the direction that you're going to go. So what you want to do is have this, or use this as a positive distractor while you are speaking. So you can remind yourself, is this valuable? Is this relevant? Am I holding their attention? Am I making this clear? And if you do that, you're going to be more likely to achieve those results than you would if you didn't. Okay? It just makes sense to focus on this. Now you're saying, well, Michael, how can I think about that and the content at the same time? Well, trust me, you can, because it's not like you're going to be teaching a workshop on Vic and Rick. You're simply going to just ask that question really quick in that cognitive breathing space, the pause. Is this valuable? It's relevant? I'm holding your attention. Is this clear? And then, boom, your attention goes right back to delivering the content in a way that's what? That's valuable, relevant, impactful, and clear, right? So it all works together, and it's why you want to shift your focus to, yes, the content, but also Vic and Rick. And when you're focused on Vic and Rick while you're delivering the content, you're also going to be more engaging to the audience. So you're not just going to be up in your head giving your presentation, looking at your slides. You're like, am I impacting the audience? Remember that, right? All right. So the second strategy, technique, if you will, is to reframe the moment. The third one is very much related to the first one, but it's very, very important. Start slow. Start slow. Start super slow. Okay? Start super slow. So you say, well, Michael, I already started and I was speaking, and then all of a sudden everything started to go out the window. Well, pause and restart, reset. Start super slow. Go super slow. So you want to take in deeper breaths, and you want to extend your words more from there. Don't worry about if people are going to think that looks strange or it sounds strange, because that will prevent you from doing the very thing you need to do to keep your presentation, your speech from going out the window. So you may start thinking, well, I can't do that right now. I've already gotten started. Yes, you can. Just reset, take a break, take a pause, ask a question, or just pause. Take a nice breath. And then say something like, okay, so let me take a look at something. There's something that I wanted to talk about. Give me just a second. Go back. And in that, you're taking a nice deep breath. Okay, so let's take a look at this, or let's continue with this. You can do that. And once you do that, you just breathe and go super slow, right? Extend those words. Pause a little more. Don't pause after every word, no, but pause a little more while you're speaking, and that gives you time to breathe, and it gives your prefrontal cortex time to regain control and clarity. Okay, so start or restart slowly. Trust me. Now, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but when you start your presentation, do the same thing. You're going to breathe, and you're going to start almost super slow. For some of you, it'll be super slow. If you go super slow, you'll get into a flow. If you start super slow, you'll get into a flow. So remember that. Okay, so just remember that in order to activate or reset your parasympathetic nervous system, which causes you to be more relaxed, you're going to need to breathe more deeply, slow everything down, slow your speech down, slow your movements down, your body movements, right? Use your body to release some energy. Use your hands, use your face, use your head, use your mouth. Use your body. Even if you're sitting down, you can use your arms, you can use your face, okay? Because when you do this, you're slowing everything down, you're relaxing your body, you're channeling more oxygen to the parts of your brain that need it in order to think and to deliver the content, that is to say what you want to say in that moment, by breathing more, breathing deeper, and slowing everything down. Once you get into a flow, then you can start speaking more dynamically. By dynamic speech, we're talking about fast and slow, right? There's a nice dynamic changing rhythm there. Okay, so we're not saying speak super slow the whole presentation unless it's a minute or two. All right, so I hope that this is helpful. Brief review. What to do if you freeze up mid-speech, everything starts to go out the window. You pause and you breathe. You pause and you breathe more. You reframe the moment. Number 2, you reframe the moment through affirmations, through self-talk, by thinking about Vic and Rick. And then 3, you start super slow. You breathe deeply. You breathe more frequently. And you start and go super slow until you feel your heart rate start to come down And then you feel like, wow, okay, I'm getting into a flow now. I'm getting into a nice rhythm now. Now I can vary my pace. I can vary my speed more. So if you do these 3 things, you'll tap into your parasympathetic nervous system, which will relax you and give you back greater control over your speech. I hope that this was helpful. I hope this entire series was helpful. And I want to encourage you to take advantage of our Virtual Speech Masters Club, where you can put into practice whatever you learn, and you'll also get the materials. For some of you who are professionals and you've been already working on your own and you want to accelerate, you almost want to guarantee progress and results as quickly as possible, you're going to want to work with us privately, one-on-one. That's the fastest way. And it's an investment. I have hundreds, probably thousands, I would say thousands now, of examples of people who have spent a few $1,000s, a couple of $1,000s, whatever the amount is, and have gotten that money back, sometimes within weeks, within a month, within a couple of months, within a few months. They've gotten that money back and more, because you're investing in your communication skills. I have a guy that I'm working with now who's in sales, so he's on the phone, and he immediately got his investment back, even before he finished paying, because he split it up into like 3 payments. He got his money back within that first month. I have other people, it's taken a little longer, but they've gotten 1 and 2 and 3 promotions over the period of 2 years, let's say. In 1 year, they probably got 1 promotion at least. And in another year, they got another one. So, and these are people who are coming back and letting me know, hey, I'm making, X number of dollars per year, and it was well worth that investment. So I'm just sharing that with you because you don't want to lose money, right? You don't want to put money into something that doesn't work for you. If you do the work, it's how our brain works. If you do the work, your brain will produce the results that we're telling you it will produce, which is smooth speech, smooth, clear, calm, and confident speech. Thank you so much. Once again, my name is Michael Williams. I look forward to seeing you and or working with you soon.